Good evening. Welcome to our second National Academy of Construction Ask Me Anything of Spring 2019. My name is Keith Molenaar, and I'm a NAC member and a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. The National Academy of Construction was established to recognize our industry leaders. An important purpose of the Academy is to provide a network system of linkage between the past and the present participants in our construction industry. As such, we've established the NAC AMA to help transfer knowledge to our next generation of construction leaders. Thank you for joining us tonight. The format for the AMA is simple. Our speakers will make a short presentation about their careers and their perspective on the industry. Then we'll ask your questions. So if you haven't already, please submit your questions to nacama@colorado.edu. At the end of the presentation, one student will win a $500 scholarship, and we'll announce it at that time. So I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Franz. We'll show some of her projects here on the slides as I introduce her. She is Chief Space and Facilities in the Office of the Deputy Director at the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. She currently leads the judicial branch's nationwide $2.5 billion capital project, space planning, and real estate programs. Her federal career in facilities and program management commenced after being commissioned as an ensign in 1985. After serving in the United States Navy Department of Civil Engineering Corps, she directed a number of high-profile programs. The Department of Justice Project Director for the $300 billion Robert F. Kennedy Main Justice Building renovation. She was project executive at the Smithsonian Institution for the $216 million Patent Office building renovation and courtyard enclosure, and director for the Division of Capital Project Management at the National Institutes of Health, which was a $1 billion in design and $2.2 billion in research and clinical facility construction. Between 2006 and 2015, Anna served as Director of Planning and Project Manager at the Project Management at the Architect of the Capitol, where she led a central support organization providing architecture and engineering design, project and construction management, in-house construction, preservation, sustainability, and an energy management office for the $2.35 billion program of the Capitol complex. Really an amazing project. Notable projects included in this program: the U.S. Capitol Dome project renovation, of which we have some pictures, the Cannon House office building renewal, the Russell Senate office building renewal, Library of Congress book modules 3 to 5, the U.S. Botanic Garden National Garden, and the power plant cogeneration projects. A little bit on Anna's background: she received a master's in architecture from the University of Texas at Austin and a doctorate in philosophy and engineering management from the George Washington University. She's currently serving as a research advisor for doctoral students in the School of Engineering and Applied Science. She's a fellow in the American Institute of Architects and a member of the National Academy of Construction. Anna currently is Director at Large of the AIA DC Board and participant in the NAC Executive Insights Committee. Additionally, she served in 2014 as the chair of the Construction Industry Institute and Architects Alternate on the President's Advisory Council of Historic Preservation. Along with multiple industry awards for project excellence, Anna is the recipient of the Architect Citation Award, the General Services Administration Honor Award in Preservation and Conservation, and the Attorney General Special Commendation Award. And that's quite an illustrious background. We're so honored to have you today. And at this point, I'd love to have you just talk a little bit about your career and your perspective on the industry, and then we'll go ahead and turn it over for questions from our participants.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for that introduction. It's very appreciated, and thank you to all of the students who have joined tonight. These forums are just critical for you to learn more about such important industry as the architecture, engineering, and construction professions. I have had a lifelong passion and excitement for design, project management, construction, operations and maintenance. There just honestly isn't anything in the industry that I don't actually enjoy. I love being an owner's rep, and I love listening to what the requirements are, detangling all of the varying direction, coming up with very simple solutions, being able to connect the owner's goals with vision, applying all of the art, science, and business that we know, the important processes to be able to control outcomes, and connecting those sort of four concepts together. So, you know, I love what I do. I'm a public servant, and I have always been honored to mentor students and participate in their own growth. So with that, I will look forward to your questions.
Great, Anna. Let's go ahead and talk. There's some kind of common themes of questions here. Some of our participants are asking about what types of skills they'll need for the industry. So let me ask a question from Camus Carnes. And what skills should up-and-coming project managers hone in on before becoming a participating project manager?
I think the most important skill that you can have as a couple of important skills. The first one being, you really have to listen to what the owner, what the project, what the designer, what the experts are saying, but you have to be smart enough and have to have critical thinking skills to be able to make and interpret and ask, you know, one, ask questions, but two, make your own judgments. You know, you really have to be able to communicate your concerns, be passionate enough to find answers to those questions. And really, I think the most important skill is to always be thinking ahead, be a risk manager, and you know, you bring all of your intelligence, your problem-solving abilities, and you know, your own energy to the program. And one of the most important thing with all of those skills is you really have to show up as a leader. And a leader is a person that's accountable and understands the authority that they have, involves the team, and is always focused on continual improvement and success.
Great. Well, thanks. Jackson Morrissey asked about your career and what made you choose it. You've talked a lot about how passionate you are. Do you recall what inspired you and made you choose the career?
Well, I was very, very interested in creating healing environments. So I went to architecture school to really, you know, study that concept. And I did work in the healthcare industry for several years. It did not become my career. You know, I took advantage of every opportunity that was afforded me in our industry. And so, you know, from the long circle of my projects, you know, I think at every turn I have tried to make sure that the architecture, the buildings, the exteriors always focused on making people healthier, more active, and enjoying the spaces that they're working or living in.
Oh, great. You're a couple questions here about public versus private sector. A number of our previous speakers have been from the private sector. So Bradley Schnabel asked, how do you feel about pursuing a career in the public versus the private sector?
I have always been called to service. And so my work after I graduated from college, I served in the United States Navy as a Civil Engineer Corps officer. And from there, I moved to civil service, and I've always been a public servant. You know, I enjoy preserving our nation's treasures, thinking about how to be a good steward of taxpayer money, and really just serving the public at large. I have never worked in the private sector, and when I retire, I certainly will move to the private sector. But my own work has just not really been profit motivated. It's been value, intrinsic value that you gain from working in the public sector.
Great. I just want to add a question. I'm curious, you in the Navy, you worked on probably some smaller projects, and a lot of those projects that I read now, the programs you're working on are in the billions of dollars. What were the skills that transferred from those smaller projects to your larger projects now?
Well, all projects require front-end planning and the ability to work with multiple stakeholders and bring everyone together with a common understanding about what the foundation of the project is, how much money there is to spend, you know, what the rules of the road are going to be in terms of timing, if there are changes, and when pencils down is called so that you can actually execute a project. So small project, large project, they basically have the same framework. And sometimes small projects take as much time or more time than large projects because they're very people intensive, and they require a lot of other logistics type of work that it just becomes much more detailed. And I think it actually helps you later on in your career if you have managed a number of of smaller projects, because then you're really prepared to move to those larger projects. All of the bumps in the road and issues that clients or tenants raise with you, suddenly they become the norm and you understand them and you're ready to deal with them.
Great, great. Let me ask a related question. Jacob Kunkel asked about a specific project, and he wants to know, what's your most difficult project that you've been part of, and why was that your most difficult project?
Well, when you say difficult, does that mean challenging or does that mean unsuccessful?
Yeah.
So for me, difficult, I'm going to take that meaning challenging, and that we were able as a team to work through a number of challenges and create a successful platform for a project. So my most challenging project that I believe that I've ever undertaken, and again, it sort of mirrors one of my earlier projects at Main Justice, but it involved really a whole-scale renovation, modernization of a historic building where there was swing space involved. It's an occupied building. And, you know, those projects are difficult because it's very hard to quantify the level of repair work, restoration work that has to be done because you can't always see it. There's a lot of hidden work. So it's hard to come up with the proper procurement type, how you handle changes, how much money you set aside. So those projects can be very challenging, but when you work through it, they actually become sort of your greatest success stories. Now, on the Cannon House office building, that project, you know, is one of the largest undertakings that Congress has approved. It had a special funding strategy that was challenging for Congress, and they worked through that. For me, being able to manage an architect, a construction manager, the agent, all of the consultants, and making sure that the team worked through problems quickly, and it wasn't just, the whole project just wasn't about cost, schedule, and you know, safety, all of course important, but the ability on those kind of projects to work fast and not lose time is really important. So having teams that can innovate together quickly, find solutions that are cost effective, work through value engineering very quickly, become very much more successful projects. In that case, what we did, we held the contracts individually with each of those consultants. We tied them together with a completion bonus, and they all had to succeed or they all did not get their bonus. So they were highly motivated to work together as a team. And as you know, this industry it is about making a profit, and we want our consultants to make a profit. But we want everyone to be treated fairly, respectfully, and have the same opportunity to succeed.
Oh, great. You mentioned teams quite a bit already. Quinn Salas asks here, what's the biggest limiting factor on teams in the construction industry?
Limiting factor.
Yeah.
Is an inability, limiting factors for teams are their inability to have honest, open dialogue with each other and constructively address problems, being able to listen to one another, make sure that when they do have solutions, they've been quantified, that you really understand what the investment or impact of the project is going to be. But teams that can't talk or communicate, that's a problem. And sometimes there's one or two people, and those individuals in those teams really need to be changed out, because every project is successful with a team that wants success and wants to work towards success. Without that, it's really hard to have a successful project without a team that's highly motivated for each other's success.
Sure. Great. Kind of coming back to some of the personal questions, if you don't mind, a number of people have been asking about. So here's one from Abigail. She asks, what made you transition from nursing to architecture? That's come up in a couple of these questions.
Okay. Well, I was a registered nurse. I taught at Texas Women's University, and my dean advised me that I had to get a PhD in nursing to continue in their program for tenure. And I said I was really interested in designing healing environments, and I didn't think that I really could contribute to nursing. I needed to contribute in a different way. And so I chose to become an architect, and I'm very pleased that I made that decision. And as I've seen, and when I said that 25 years ago, people would look at me cross-eyed. Today, this is all we talk about: healing environments, environments that are healthy and well, and that energize people, keep them from being sick. They're more productive, energetic, all of those things. It's sort of come full circle. But I made the right decision for myself, and all of the skills that you learn in nursing are very transferable to architecture and this profession. It's all about your ability to assess, plan, implement, and evaluate a program. And so with those critical skills of how you go about solving problems and how you treat people and understand people, and really learn how to be empathetic and listen and communicate, I think for me, it all sort of came together as one package.
Great. Somewhat of a related question on your career path. A number of people have asked here, so related questions. Esther Daramola asks, as a woman in the workforce, how has it been to getting to where you are? Also, what advice would you give women looking for leadership roles in a male dominant industry?
I have always been treated with the greatest respect. I was grown in an organization in the United States Navy Civil Engineer Corps where I wasn't treated any differently than my male counterparts. And everything that we did from the absolute day that I started in the Navy, I was expected to think, behave, and treat others as an admiral. I was an ensign, but the expectation of my leadership was that my vision, their vision for me was to become an admiral. And, they made sure that I attended executive leadership training, and they mentored me, and certainly did everything within their power to guide my career. And so I was very different than my counterparts graduating from architecture school, because I had been trained in leadership, organizational management, in finance and procurement, contracting, in public works management, and also in operations for working with CVs. And so I had a very different background coming into the public sector. So it was very easy for me to take on a role as an owner's rep because of the way that I had been grown in an organization. So I would say to any young woman that wants to enter into this field, study leadership, study organizational management, learn about procurement and acquisition, and it's a lot of other skills that make you successful other than technical skills of being an architect or an engineer. It's a rare day when I go to a meeting and there's another woman in the room. And so at some point in your life, you just learn that you're a human and you're a participant and a contributor, and your voice is heard, one, because you have expert knowledge, you're experienced, and you can articulate the problem and provide ways to find solutions. And usually what I do is always recommend find the best business case in these solutions. And if you can get everyone focused in that direction, you can usually get everyone on board to sort of think in the same manner that what you're really trying to do is find the best solution at the lowest cost to the government. So, you know, I hear within the industry some disparity or lack of respect, but, you know, I personally have not experienced that. And even if it was suggested to me, I think that, you know, I think that I'm assertive enough to just say, excuse me, that's not correct. I will tell you my first visit to a construction site, the superintendent advised me that I should be wearing different clothing the next time I come to his construction site. And what I said to him was, I just want to remind you that I am the one signing off on your work and providing you your paycheck. So that ended that tale. And that conversation never happened again. So just stand up and say no.
Great. I really appreciate the response. A few people are asking about the dome project. So let me ask you a couple questions here. Indu is asking pretty much an architectural perspective on this. What criteria should be considered when restoring a dome?
You have to, well, one, you consider the age of the dome, the materials that were used, and the last time that it had received any maintenance. And so in the dome's case, it's made out of cast iron. As you know, it's extremely old. It had never had a major restoration. It had had a lot of maintenance work done on it, but never a complete restoration. And so in that case, the cast iron that the dome is made of, it's not highly engineered. So many of the pieces aren't really the same. So there's a lot of racking, and all that racking caused a lot of cracks in the cast iron. And so, you know, those were the factors you really have to use. It took about 10 years to study the dome and really decide what was really wrong with it, what needed to be done, what kinds of safety features have to be added to make sure it's safe to maintain the dome, and just even determining what are the proper coatings and the proper repair method for the cracks. So it's a very complicated project, very interesting, and of course a symbol of America, and a fabulous project to have ever been a part of.
Yeah. Jamie Chapin was also interested in the dome, and specifically, what were some of the biggest unique challenges you and your team saw on the dome? And in general terms, how did you mitigate them?
Two major challenges. One was how to estimate the number of cracks. So the first step was addressing the drum that the dome sits on. So that gave us a lot of insight into the extent of the repair work needed. So that was good, and having a proper contract of how to address that, making sure that we had included estimates for the repair work in the contract so that we were able to contain the cost. And I think the biggest challenge is it had to be done, the entire dome, the exterior, the interstitial space, and the interior dome had to be restored between the inaugural time. It had to be finished within that 4-year period. So it was, you know, it was on a fast track in terms of schedule. And the dome itself, the scaffolding was very, very important. It was another very expensive item, and it had to be in place by a certain date. Otherwise, the project could never recover that time. And one of the most interesting discussions we ever had was just asking the contractor. We could see that they were falling behind, but just how many pounds of steel do you have to hoist each day and put in place to be able to have the scaffolding in place in time to be able to execute the rest of the work? And they were lifting, I'm just sort of rounding this now, but you know, they were lifting about half the amount that needed to be lifted. And so we asked them, what are you going to do to lift the remaining half? You have to bring on some special crews, and that's what they did. And we were able to escort them, and they made their date. But you know, it was just an interesting discussion about you know, just doing a simple calculation of how many pounds of steel led to such an important decision.
And again, the theme of teams comes through there as well. Huh?
Well, and the dome, because of the scaffolding that we used, and the scaffolding was really just rested on the dome. It couldn't be attached, and that scaffolding could only be loaded. You know, it's in 6 different sections, and it could only be loaded by so many pounds each day by workers and their materials they're bringing up and equipment. And so it was very complicated in terms of operation research. And just modeling that so that everyone was safe at all times is really critical.
Well, great, great. Here's a question from Katie Beagle. What has been different about working in the judiciary versus the other types of federal agencies?
The judicial branch, and especially in the job that I am in, we do not have real property authority. Not every agency in the executive branch or the legislative branch has real property authority. So there's a select number of groups that do. And so when you have that authority, you can design and construct, and you can operate and maintain these facilities. For those that don't have real property authority, you know, our job is to define the owner's requirements. And we are able to do studies and cost estimates. We can do construction management work and just observing the work that's being done if it meets our requirements. And so this job really, at the end of my career in the public sector, is very much, I'm an owner's rep. I'm the judicial branch's agent to make sure that our requirements are met. So while General Services Administration is designing and constructing courthouses, we are right there hand in hand with them, making sure that the decisions that are being made meet our requirements. So it's a leadership job, and it's very different. So much easier to design and construct it yourself than it is to influence others on the best way to do it to control risk.
And how, just a personal question, what is different about the clients in the judicial area versus Congress or some of the others that you've worked with?
Well, I think if you look at my resume, you will see that I have worked with the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General. I've worked with museum directors. I have worked with institute and scientific directors at NIH. I've worked with congressional members and their oversight committees. And now I'm working with over 3,000 judges and, and different levels of judges. So there are all different kinds of judges. And so, you know, all of these very experienced and professionals that have a great deal of authority and command presence, and can very likely just direct you. At the judicial branch, you know, we work at will. So you will have someone say, "This is how I want it." But, you know, it's my job to explain what we can do, what we can't do, and why we can't do it. And we manage these projects as a portfolio so that we're treating everybody the same. We have a national change board so that everyone has the benefit of the same decisions and outcomes and investments. And so that's how we manage it. And, you know, I am very used to having to deal with people in positions of great power. But I also feel that, you know, my own expertise and the fact that I know that I'm treating everyone and every project in the same respectful manner, you know, I'm really comfortable with that. And so I think that it makes them comfortable too. And they have to trust. They have to learn how to trust in your judgment, and that you know that you have their best interest at heart, that your job, I'm not interested in saying no to anyone, but at times we have to say no. But, you know, I'm there to protect them. and to make sure that their requirements are fulfilled.
Yeah, I think you work for a very demanding clientele there, and with buildings that are built to represent the court and are going to be there for 100 plus years. I think it's an incredibly challenging management and place to be an owner's rep or an agent. So I really hand it to you.
I think that the hardest thing for anyone to understand is the commitment that many of these individuals have to their professions and to their jobs, of how they are serving America. And when they talk about the grace and the dignity of the law and the importance of the work that they do, and that they're not architects or engineers, but they want to have the aesthetics meet how they feel, their own passion about, and their commitment to serving the public. So, that's the challenge, especially in today's world where the budgets are very trim, and we're having to find more modern ways to meet their needs. But that sort of it's counterintuitive to what they've been used to in terms of wood paneling or special lighting, and a lot of the higher end finishes that we're really just not providing them.
Great. There's a question from Jamie here about teams. So I'm interested to hear your answer on this as well. You've been talking a lot about your client management here, but Jamie would like to know how you deal with team members who do not pull their weight. Do you talk to their manager or talk to them directly?
My answer is, whether it's a team or a friend or a colleague, if you believe that they are not fulfilling whatever their requirements are, the best thing you can do is to sit down with the person and just try and make the environment safe, and just talk with them about what their responsibilities are, and what they are accountable for. And if they're not meeting those requirements, you really have to talk with them first. It's of no consequence to go to their boss or their manager and say this person's not doing their job. It's best for you, take the leadership role. You reach out to them. It's possible that they don't know that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. It's possible that in their mind they are. It's possible they may not understand what needs to be done. And so you, in that role, if you're noticing that the team is maybe not being as effective as it needs to be, you can add leadership, you can add mentorship. But at some point, if it doesn't change, then I think you have to call a timeout. In CII, we had a tool. It's called team temperature, team alignment. And what I've always asked on all of my projects is that each month the team just does this quick poll, and you can do it as a secret ballot, or you can also just do it out loud, and talk about how's the team functioning, what needs to be done differently, did problems arise that didn't get solved quickly enough, do they feel they're not getting honest dialogue, and a lot of times most of the time when you do that, your consultants, if they're not pulling their weight or whatever, they'll step up because they want to succeed. And it's important that you let them know that you want them to succeed. We're all in it together. So the best thing you can do is just keep the ship going in one direction and don't let it fail.
Great. Yeah, those are great words of wisdom there, talking about alignment. And it's an interesting industry we're in, that we bring teams together so quickly and have to learn to function like that together as a team, and then we almost as quickly go on to the next project. So it can be challenging. Two questions here about things that don't go right all the time. So Tyler wants to know, how often do projects fail from a project manager standpoint, and what do you do as a project manager to know if a project's failing?
Well, all projects have the potential to fail, right? And the project manager's job is to make sure that they don't. but at some point there comes a time when you realize that either the budget wasn't set properly, the schedule wasn't set properly, the team's not functioning, it's not the right set of consultants. But there is a time that this project can't go any further than the way it is. In the federal government, we terminate for convenience or terminate for default. Either the consultants haven't performed properly and they really should be terminated for default, or they terminate for convenience and then you settle with them on the amount of money that it takes to sort of close out their contract and you move on to a new contract. But I think as you get more experience, I think when you first start, you think every problem that arises is a major problem and that, everything's going to go wrong. But in fact, you learn after a while that, projects are problems. I mean, that's what they are. It's about problem solving. And so as you get more skillful in how to solve those problems and guide and make sure that you're really applying risk management in your processes, and that you're not just doing qualitative risk management, you're also doing quantitative risk management, you just get smarter. And so, I can put my finger on 2 projects that I really had to change direction in because the project just could not advance any further. And not for lack of trying, but it just couldn't advance any further. So when you realize you're at that point, it's important just to take a time out and figure out what is the right next step.
Great. Well, that relates to Nicole Blythe's question. How do you refocus a group after a failure?
Well, generally what in our industry, what we describe meetings are called lessons learned meetings. And the idea is to walk through the process that you followed, figure out what happened, make process improvements so it doesn't happen again, and you really try and learn from those failures. I mean, a lot of times you learn more from a failure than you do from a success. And you shouldn't be afraid of it. I mean, you just can't, it's not personal. There's nothing we do that's personal. This is just work. So it's not a personal failure. It's a process failure. So you just correct the process.
Oh, that's a great response. Great response. Let's change a little bit here. A couple of questions about sustainability. You've been working in the industry before that term came in and seen LEED and other aspects of sustainability come in. So Jordan was curious about the court system specifically. How is sustainability incorporated into the design and allocation of space for U.S. court system? In other words, how are the ideas behind sustainability incorporated in your projects every day?
We have the judicial branch has a United States Courts Design Guide, and then GSA has a P100. Those are guides that standards that we use. And for our courthouse and new construction projects, we work to achieve LEED Gold, those sort of standards. In our own courts design guide and in the work that we do, we are always focused on, space efficiency, using the right materials, making sure that our operating costs are as low as possible, taking steps to reduce our energy consumption. And then we also have a program that you probably have heard. I guess it has different terms. Workplace innovation. We call it the integrated workplace of the future. And we basically are opening up walls, letting the light in, making sure that these are healthy, productive spaces that people want to come and work in. A lot of the federal government, the spaces that our employees are working in are fairly dated and not modernized. So it's really nice to come into a workspace where we've eliminated paper. We're very resource conscious. The cleaning materials, everything that we put into our contracts, et cetera, are all in green. So.
Oh, great. There's a question. Oops, I just lost it here. Sorry. So you talked about the design guide and some of the regulations. Lauren Brown wanted to know, have you ever had to challenge a regulation set by the government that you disagreed with, and what was the outcome?
I don't think, the only one that I can really think of is under the Americans with Disability Act. You know, there's some difficulties in implementing some of the regulation, but over time that has been challenged, and the regulation has been revised and then again modified for the federal government. So I think usually the government has a way that you are able to raise questions about the regulation, and you can also seek waivers. Sometimes on even just simple code matters in historic buildings, you do a fire code assessment and you figure out for that particular project what are the right regulations. And so I know that's not necessarily a challenge to the federal government's regulation, but no, it really sort of modifies those regulations in a manner that you can implement them to make sure that you're building in a safe manner and the building is safe for people's occupancy.
Great. We have a little under 10 minutes left here, and so we'll be wrapping up fairly shortly. But again, a lot of questions just generally about your career path and seeking advice for our students who will be quickly entering. So Natalie McCraw asks, what keeps you excited and interested about your career path?
You know, I really don't know how to answer that question, because, you know, there just isn't anything in facilities management that I don't love. You know, I have told the story many times. If I have to go work on the loading dock, I'll be just as happy as working with the Attorney General. I mean, I just love the work. I'm passionate about the work, and I get out of bed every morning. I can't wait to get to the office and work on these projects. So, you know, if you find something you're passionate about, you know, that's all I can say. I'm just passionate about it. And I just don't see it ever ending. You know, architects don't retire, as everybody knows. Almost every architect that's working on our courthouse construction program, the, you know, signature architects are 75 to 80 years old. I mean, if you get into the business, you will do it because you love it, and you will just, it just will not ever end. That's all I can say.
Great. Talk a little bit more about how you've changed over your career path here. Grace Stakowitz asked, what aspect of engineering made you pursue a PhD in engineering? And was there a certain field that you were interested in or wanted to try?
So I pursued the engineering management degree because I was really interested in innovation and technology and how it was changing our buildings so that they were much more smart and sustainable. And I was really interested in decision science and just what are the right next things that we should be doing in these buildings. And so whether it was about self-repairing buildings and materials, modeling tools to help us make better decisions, and just basic technology, how it's changing. And so I pursued it because, you know, I wanted to be a better leader for the people that I was managing. You know, I was essentially GSA for the Architect of the Capitol, as I work now with GSA, and a group of engineers and architects, planners, space planners. But, you know, the notion that, you know, you have to stay on the leading edge. You have to drive the leading edge. If you're not interested in the leading edge, you're not going to succeed in this profession. You have to be on the edge. And you have to be pushing industry to find better ways to do things, better materials, better integration of technology. And if you're really pursuing greatness, you know, that's where you want to be. If you just want to be average, and collecting a paycheck, then you're not going to be interested in that. You know, I've always been a lifelong learner. I just think it's all about continual improvement. And there's so many, the industry is changing so rapidly, materials are changing so rapidly that, you know, I just want to be a part of the conversation. You know, I don't want to sit on the sideline. And it was amazing when I started in that program, my engineers that were working for me at the Architect of the Capitol, they became much more passionate about engineering because, you know, I would ask them questions. What do you do? Or are you putting in new nanotechnology in the concrete that we're using, you know? And so it just became much more interesting environment to work in. You know, I would be, you know, I had to actually, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I had to teach myself calculus. And I would ask the engineers, look, did I do this calculation correctly? And they would look at it and you know, they got with it. So, you know, I mean, I would recommend if you're interested in joining this industry, you know, do it for all the right reasons and do it because you love it and that it's something that you want to be part of that big change in the future because it is going to change.
Yeah, we really are on I mean, the pace of change in our industry is going to just increase in the next, you know, 10 to 20 years. And so, yeah, and I really, really appreciate the message of being a lifelong learner and continuous learning. It's what keeps us growing and keeps us moving. At the end of high school, the end of college, we're really not done. And you're really show that through your career that you've maintained and continued to be a lifelong learner, and absolutely has contributed to your success for sure. So Sam Walsess is asking about what you're most proud of in your career. So maybe that would be one we could, I think we might be able to get one more in, but what are you most proud of in your career reflecting on it?
I am most proud of the individuals that I have influenced to go on to better and greater jobs and positions. I just really have enjoyed mentoring them, you know, and they have worked hard. They worked hard to get their registrations, their licenses, and they were smart and capable. And there was, you know, I just wanted them to succeed. And so there's a couple of individuals that have fabulous jobs right now. And, you know, I'm just really proud that I was part of that. And, you know, I've had many, many students that I've mentored. And a couple of them went to architecture school. I'm proud of that. So I think at the end of the day, it's not necessarily what we build. It's the people that we help construct, right? You know, and help them find their own way and contribute to this industry. And they have all been great contributors, whether it's been through research at Construction Industry Institute or other avenues. So, you know, I think that's what I'm most proud of.
Great. And then I'll let you close here. We do have to close up and tell our participants who won the scholarship here as well. But if you'd like to close up with any advice for our students who are listening and will be entering the workforce fairly quickly here.
Well, I will close very quickly with you know, something that that I learned a long time ago is, you know, dream big, have big dreams. But when you have a big dream, you really have to plan well and make your plans, work really hard because everything you endeavor in life takes a lot of work. You know, just trust yourself because you are the one that is pursuing this and adding the expertise, especially to our industry. And then along the way, have a lot of fun because I think that's really important. But if you just take those simple words and know how to connect, you know, people's goals and the vision and whole system design with outcomes, you're going to be very, very successful. And if you ever have any questions of me, feel free to call.
Well, thank you so much. You know, we just can't thank you enough for your time and your advice. We really appreciate it, how thoroughly you've answered all the questions, and I'm inspired. listening to your answers, so I know our student participants are as well. I just wanted to close with a couple things. Thank you to the National Academy of Construction for sponsoring this and providing the scholarship. Wayne Crew and Sandy Pittman at the National Academy put a lot of time into this, and we really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank Jane Song, who helps organize this and keep everything moving. We couldn't do this without all of that. Anyone online here, if you've missed any of we've done 4 previous ones. This is the 5th. The National Academy of Construction now has a YouTube channel, so you can just Google National Academy of Construction, ask me anything, and you'll be able to see this presentation or the previous ones. So without further ado, our winner of our $500 scholarship is Grace Stakowicz from Manhattan College. So Grace will be in contact with you via email to get you your scholarship. And thanks everyone else for listening, and look forward to our last AMA of the spring in March. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.